Hey everyone, welcome to NerdTube, and we're going to be talking about the career of arguably one of the biggest stars in wrestling, and that is Stone Cold Steve Austin, formerly Stunning Steve Austin. I am with Cousin Cheeto. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing good, doing good.
Okay, Stone Cold Steve Austin started off as Stunning Steve Austin. Now, he got his name according to a shoot I saw from Dutch Mantel, because his real name's Steve Williams. There was Doctor Death Steve Williams. I'm sure it's like a RADA thing where you can't have two actors with the same name. So he said, "Well, your name's Steve Austin." So that's how he was Steve Austin. Then I first became aware of him myself in WCW, where he won the title for the United States title from Bobby Eaton. I was working part of the Hollywood Blondes. Then he went into ECW, where he started to shooting and do these. Have you ever seen have you ever seen the promos he did in ECW, or have you ever
Not in
seen
particularly.
anything before he was in WWE?
No, I've seen clips of him in WCW prior to I didn't watch him because I started watching wrestling in '96, and I watched primarily WCW, and I don't remember seeing him. But then so I primarily watched it then. I know my first exposure to Steve Austin was at WrestleMania, like around WrestleMania 13 time ish, before that because he was feuding with the Hart Foundation, and I really love the Hart Foundation. The only people I really liked at WWF at that point was the Hart Foundation, so that was my first exposure to him.
Okay, so after he does that, WWE gives him a call, and they gave him a pretty poor bit gimmick. They give him the ringmaster, where he's being managed by the $1 million man, Ted DiBiase. He has to use the $1 million dream as a finish. He has the WWE championship. I kind of recall this, of him doing this because he looked a little bit different. I think he still had a little bit of hair.
Yeah, he
He
had
didn't
like
have
the
the
blonde hair. I remember seeing some stuff of this. Not
yeah,
obviously at the time, but after the fact. I do remember seeing some of that.
yeah. So basically, he goes away, and what he does, he watches a documentary on, I think it's the guy who calls himself the Iceman. I think it's Richard Kuklinski. I think I'm getting the name
I don't
right.
remember.
Anyway, he's watching this, and he says this. Now, he's married to a British person. Now, we British people have quite a weird turn of phrase. Now, there's one way you get your tea goes cold, or something's going cold, and says, drink that or eat that before that goes stone cold. So he said that, and he came in because before that he'd been getting really bad names. He'd been getting like Icy Dagger, Chilling McFreeze, Otto Van Ruthless, all these awful names, and it was just like, no, you're Stone Cold Steve Austin. Now, uh, he was doing pretty well, and he came with this new attitude. He was more aggressive. There's more to it. Now, the first thing that put him on the map, and the first thing that I kind of brought him to my forefront was when he beat Jake Snake Roberts in the King of the Ring, and he had, I think, one of the most famous promos in history where he said, "Austin 316, I just kicked your ass." And basically, from then, a whole slew of T-shirts were born. So, was this the first time that you came noticing him, or was this like you've been sort of like you've been on your radar a little bit, and you just like he kind of came a player at that sort of point
Was
for
it
yourself?
Stone Cold or was it Dustin Reynolds?
Uh, no, Stone Cold who said Austin 316 is going
No,
to
no,
kick
no.
you.
But I thought he was talking to Dustin Reynolds, not Jake the Snake.
No, the wrestler he beat Jake the Snake because at the time Jake the Snake, because of his problems, had gone full religious fundamentalist
Oh, okay.
and
I just
was close to a load of Bible verses. And it was Michael Hayes, P.S. Hayes, holding the thing where, and he says, and he does that, and ever since that, that's the 316 things. The
and
thing
thus
is that
started the Austin 316 era.
yeah, so it's carry on doing working from that. Now, a couple of things happened in this about the same area where he's going through, and he has, I think, one of the best entrances of all time. Where he has the shattered glass, and then he has like the rock, so guitar things. Now, this has led to several, I think, great entrances. One of which has, I think, one of the best WrestleMania matches of all time. It's in my top three personally. It's Randy Savage versus Steamboat. It's Jericho versus it's Benoit versus Angle, and this is number one for me. It's Bret Hart versus Stone Cold Steve Austin with Ken Shamrock as referee in a submission match, and he has an awesome entrance where the glass smashes all the way through and he comes through and it looks awesome. So, is this the first match? Because you said you're a Bret Hart fan. Was this a match you were interested in?
Oh
This
yeah,
whole feud?
this is the only reason why I watched WrestleMania 13 even after the fact. I mean, Bret Hart, I've always loved the Hart Foundation. I don't know why. I love the fact that they're a family of technical wrestlers. Even though I know that it's weird that they're really not because Neidhart and Bulldog are not technical wrestlers at all. But I mean, Owen and Bret are. But I really like that was honestly the Hart Foundation. Besides like the NWO, the Hart Foundation was the first stable I was introduced to. Like like so that's why it's like they kind of stick out in my brain. Brett was their leader, and I mean yeah, like Austin was basically going up against like four or five people in a stable all by himself.
Yeah, so like this, I mean, this match I think is really really good because they do stuff inside the ring, they wrestle outside the ring, but the stuff outside the ring isn't too long. It's just enough so they get hard hits in, and it has some member like where he hits him with the ring bell and stuff like that, and like there's a point where Stone Cold gets busted open or starts to bleed,
Oh, I
and
mean
they
that
quickly
moment's infamous through all of wrestling. I mean,
and then he gets into the sharpshooter, turns him over, and Stone Cold will not quit even though he's got blood like pouring down his face, and Ken Shamrock is looking down at it, and basically he's there like grabbing his head, and he just passes out. And I think that is the greatest double turn of all time because Bret Hart becomes heel and Stone becomes face. But the thing is, he's never become a face. He's always been a bit of an edgy face, where he's like he's not really a good guy, but he's sort of like he'll say what he means and means what he says, sort of thing. And I think that's was always the key.
well, and I mean they always wanted Stone Cold to be a heel. Like they pushed him like they did so much stuff to make Stone Cold a heel, and they even said in I think in some kind of Attitude Era documentary I saw they said like you know what their last ditch effort to get Stone Cold as a heel was to like make him do the Austin 316 thing. They're like we're gonna go after religion. That's the last big play we have to make Austin a heel. They tried so hard to make him a heel, and just fans gravitated towards him.
Yeah, so like, what do you think about the end of this match? I mean, do you think this match is one of the best matches in WrestleMania, like I do, or do you think that this match is better on it than?
Okay, so here's my thing. I'm not much of a Stone wrestling wise. I am not much of a Stone Cold fan. Punch, punch, kick, kick, stunner is basically his gimmick. I know that a lot of that has to do with his injury. From Owen Hart. But
Which we're going to
honestly,
get to.
huh?
Which we're going to get to in a minute.
But I mean, Austin never impressed me as a wrestler per se. So was this like one of the greatest? No, not really for me. But was the tone and the storytelling in the ring good? Absolutely. This was a great storytelling match. And you're right. It was kind of that moment where the scales tipped, where it's like Stone Cold was becoming more over and Brett was becoming less over in the fact like of faces. And then they just kind of went Brett the heel route and then they went face, they even though they didn't turn him face, he still was more popular after, even after that. So I really feel like that moment was definitely a turning point in the WWF at that point, um, based on where things were heading, because that's where the Attitude Era, like kind of even before that a little bit, was brewing.
Yeah, so like he became after this became a massive star. Like people take like, and I think I think they went into SummerSlam with him having full the rocket ship to get to the next bit. Now, what happened was they were going for some maneuver, and it was basically like a tombstone maneuver, but instead of putting him down on his knees like he should do, for reasons unknown to only Owen Hart, he actually sat on his bum.
Well,
So
no,
he had,
that's how he did the move. Like that's how he did the move on a lot of people, and for some reason, I don't. I mean, I understand why they ban it because it's like if your head is going below, okay, this is gonna sound bad, but if your head is going below the crotch area, you are at risk for getting a compact fracture, which is what he got. They broke his neck.
yeah, because
And so
literally he couldn't. He said that for in the documentary, he says he couldn't even move like really for about 2 minutes or something like.
yeah.
Literally says, give me time," and all this sort of stuff.
And I mean,
And
yeah, he
yeah,
basically Owen had to sell the rest of that match, and honestly, they should have stopped it right there. Truth be told.
yeah. So so he goes off for a bit, and he comes back to take on Owen again in Montreal, where he has another smashing glass entrance. But unfortunately, if you've watched this repeated, only half the glass goes away, so he has to like shoulder barge the rest of it, and he kind of looks badass when he does it. Um, yeah, so that's cool. He wins the title again. Um, but at this time, he's sort of building towards the world title match with Shawn Michaels. Now, Shawn Michaels at this current time, I don't think I'm speaking out of pocket here, had a bit of a reputation for being, seriously, difficult to work with.
No, I mean, I yeah, that's he's admitted it himself. He was not a good person back then.
Yeah, so yeah, the stories about apparently that he was a bit of a prick to Steve when he was supposed to put him over. But apparently, the Undertaker was in the back wrapping his hands to make sure that he was going to punch the guy if he didn't do what he should do. So they got Mike Tyson in when Mike Tyson was red hot. AEW have him now and stuff like that. But he's not Mike Tyson of the 1990s now. Mike Tyson of the 2020s, where everything that's happened to Mike Tyson has now happened. So, but back then Mike Tyson was red hot, and he decked Sean. Stone Cold is in the stunner. 1, 2, 3. Your new champion is Stone Cold. And I think that is the birth of the Attitude Era because it goes from being the kind of in ring squeaky clean, heartbreak kid to being this redneck back at badass is Stone Cold. And what started was probably one of the greatest rivalries and probably one of the greatest storylines in wrestling. I mean, I would say it's top three. I'd say number one is the NWO. The way that the NWO was initially done, and every week it was brilliant. The Stone Cold storyline is only third to that. I think second is probably the Mega Powers breaking apart because that was done over a period of time and it was kind of done. But I put this as number three personally. I don't know how. Whereabouts do you rank this in sort of like long term storytelling?
I mean, storytelling wise, I mean, I wouldn't rank it even in my top 10, truth be told. But that's just because I don't like Stone Cold. Like, if you're a Stone Cold fan, I can see it. Because, I mean, this is like, I mean, the buildup of, I'm trying to think of somebody in WCW well, or in even,
When they said
WWE.
when they did the third man, they've been teasing it was Sting, saying it was Rodney Savage, saying it was DDP, and no one ever thought it was going to be Hulk Hogan until he came down that ring at Bastard Breach, and then was like chasing that, and then came to the ring and did the let drop on Sandy Savage. He's like, and literally everybody threw everything they had. That was brilliant storytelling.
I mean, yeah, probably the NWO is probably one of in my opinion. I wouldn't put Austin in for me in that higher of regard. But as I said, I'm not I'm not a I'm not a Stone Cold fan, so I don't have that same intensity and love for that story. So I'm not saying it's a bad story at all. Period. I mean, it is a good it, in the frame of is it a good like where he's building up and climbing through the ranks and then going from intercontinental to tag team to like number one contender then to Royal Rumble then to world heavyweight champion. Yeah, I mean it's a good story. It takes place over a long time. It's not like people who just walk in and get the world title within 2 months. Brock Lesnar, but even like Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle still had to build himself up through the ranks. He wasn't a WWF or even a world heavyweight champion when he first got there. He did a lot of tag work, intercontinental title work. Like that build up is what's important. And all those beats were there in Stone Cold's, repertoire. So I mean, he paid his dues, he built it up, and he got to his time to shine.
Yeah, so the Mr. McMahon character, which again people have said is closer than we like to think to the real Vince McMahon. Because everyone thinks, it's only a character. It's like, there's some truth to the way he really is in there.
Mm-hmm.
He's pretty,
I believe it.
uh, like he'd fire Austin or do these other things to Austin. So I think having that enemy who literally runs the company that you're the champion of, and that he wants you to kiss ass, and he wants you to be corporate, and he wants you to do this, that. I think was awesome, uh, just for the company, and because everybody wants to whatever they do. Sometimes, not all the time, give their boss the middle finger, give them a middle finger or something, give them peace of their mind. And he was a guy who, for a living, got to Stone Cold Stunner his boss.
I was about to say it hit it right at the right point where like the workforce was just starting to push back against like the management, like in real life. You know what I mean? Like everything wasn't hunky dory. Everybody didn't think that work was hunky dory, and everybody wanted to Stone Cold Stunner their boss. And I think that hit at the right climate in the all over the world technically. It hit at the right moment all over the world where it just it
It's
resonated with everybody.
yeah. So so he was champion for most of that, even though he'd get fired at intimate teams. And again, there's a bit of a thing where Mick Foley was sort of like getting treated like Bret Hart a little bit in this and stuff like that. And Mick talks about it in his book and stuff like that. But the guy that is getting pushed at the same time as Stone Cold is Dwayne the Rock Johnson. And the Rock is everything that Stone Cold isn't. He's a corporate guy. He We're going to talk about whether he's a better worker or not. I think anybody who can make the people's elbow work is all right by my book. You know what I mean?
Well, and
Because
he's also like wrestling royalty with all of his family and stuff like that in wrestling. And I mean, Stone Cold, as far as I know, he doesn't have any relatives in wrestling prior to, maybe even now. Like, so he, like, The Rock kind of is coming in. He's kind of like this poster, and he has the look too. Austin didn't never had the look of, like like what Vince McMahon wants. He never had the look of a Batista or an Orton or a Rollins or you know what I mean. But The Rock did, and so that's why I think that rivalry was so good. Was because even though I think they're both crappy wrestlers, I'm sorry, I do. I think Rock and Austin are both crappy wrestlers. They do cut amazing promos. They can tell a good story, and they work.
yeah, so this leads to one. This was because again full disclosure, I've always been a WCW fan over a WWE fan because I was always a huge Sting back. Yeah, again, like I know you like saying, "Oh, you're a big Aston back." Actually, no. Actually, I was always a Sting fan, a Vader fan, a Goldberg fan. I know people will say, "Oh, Goldberg," a NWO fan. I was always a fan of that sort of stuff rather than WWE stuff. Doesn't mean I think that WWE stuff was bad. It just didn't appeal to me personally.
I
The
mean, I'm in
style.
the same boat. Like I like a lot of the I like more of the light. I like more a lot of the mid card in WCW and the cruiserweights and stuff like
Oh,
that. But I agree with you. I like WCW over WWF.
when I started watching it, WCW like mid-90s, it was awesome. Like Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko, Psychosis, Rey Mysterio, Regal,
Juventude.
yeah, all that stuff. They were phenomenal wrestlers, and they would cream WWE's mid card. WWE's mid card, no offense to any of them, were shit in comparison to that. Anyway, we don't have time for me to go into. And plus, I love Sting, so yeah. Anyway, so at this point, they go to SummerSlam and they recreate the Montreal Steel Screw Rub because Rock gets Stone Cold in the into the sharpshooter and he gets into ring the bell again, and now the Rock is champion again. Is now the champion, so he's the people's champ or the corporate champ. So he becomes heel. He's now this corporate heel, and he has like this whole thing. Then Stone Cold is like wrestling against the Undertaker in first match where he like raises him on like a little cross where he's doing that. And as I said, there's lots of like interesting matches leading to the WrestleMania match between him and The Rock. Now I know you just said that they were crappy wrestlers. I think you're underestimating their abilities a tiny bit. I do think they're pretty decent. The Rock can sell, and so can Stone Cold. So
I
and they
think The
know how.
Rock can sell. I think The Rock can sell. Stone Cold don't sell nothing. I'm sorry. He doesn't sell anything well. Just like Goldberg. Goldberg never sold anything well.
Goldberg can sell stuff. He just chooses not to.
Oh.
As I said, I'm a big Goldberg fan because the guy's a sweet guy. If you actually heard the guy being interviewed, he comes across as a really really nice guy. I just partly just in wrestling he wasn't he's a bit hard to get on with, but yeah. So they're going back and forth with the title, with Mick Foley getting it sometimes, and then Triple H starts coming into things. Now I think it's about this time he started either dating or he was engaged to Stephanie. I think this is around that time.
I think
So,
this is about the time that they started dating.
yeah. So yeah, because he'd always been kind of like a mid cadder at this time. He'd always be like intercontinental champion sort of level. This is when the intercontinental champion, actually meant something. Um, so for some reason he could Stone Cold wouldn't put him over, so Mick Foley had to get the championship off Austin and put it on him. And this is when Stone Cold has started having some personal problems because he got divorced from his first wife and started going out with somebody who was in the wrestling business, who was Deborah, who
Hmm.
was Jeff Jarrett's marriage, and they got married. And she stayed while he went to WCW back in 2000. Anyway, so they were together, and they had some problems, started having problems right away because his drinking and apparently he was on steroids and stuff because and stuff like that. So he was having some violent episodes because of that. So he literally was having problems, and then one episode he was supposed to put over Brock Lesnar in a King of Ring, qualifier, and he said no, I'm not doing it, and he literally didn't turn up. So that's how their relationship for a while there. He came back, and I think he feuded with Eric Bischoff for a little bit. He was like in Redneck, Roughhouse matches and this sort of thing. And then he had one last match. Oh, I forgot a big thing that he did. Sorry, I forgot the fame in the whole what's it called the whole insurrection thing where WCW invaded. It's the most what has got to be the most botched invasion of anything I've ever seen ever. Because literally you have entire entity invading WWE who are basically running for their jobs, and they get their ass handed to them. Now I don't care how what's the word how how big you are. If I'm going for a job, I I'm going to claw street and say I'm not going to put my shoulders down. You have to literally have to know how to kill me to get me to slow down if I'm going for my job. So again, they missed the mark totally. But during this next WrestleMania, Stone Cold turned on by shaking the hands of Mr. McMahon, which literally is the worst. I think it's the worst heel turn of all time. I'm trying
Yeah,
to.
that's. I remember when that. Like, I wasn't. I don't know if I was watching at that point, but it was. That was terrible. Like, you don't go from feuding that long with the boss and then you go and shake his hand. Like, I understand from a narrative standpoint why they think that, because the feud had gone on for so long that like they had to do something different. But marrying
What
marrying the boss's daughter, I mean that I know.
well, the thing is, what Stone Cold said that I said subsequently is that he wished what he did is he pulled him in, gave him a kick, Stone Cold stood up, and he became that edgy heel that he's always been. I said, yeah, that could have worked.
I mean, it would have been
Uh,
the same old hat, but it's better than him becoming corporate Austin or whatever he became. Like I
then after that, he went over to WCW because when I think of WCW, I do not think Stone Cold Steve Austin. I'm sorry, and he wasn't even there that long. I think he was only there like a couple of years. I can think of tons of WCW guys who should have been there on the top of the card. Sting. I know that he wasn't there at the time, but
well, I think
Sting.
Sting was offered and Sting did not want to go to the WWE.
Yeah, I wonder why. DDP, Booker T, Kevin Nash, Stock Hall, the NWO. You could have had that.
I don't know. WCW at that point was really struggling with their heavyweight card. Like they still had a pretty solid mid card, but their heavyweight division between, I mean, with Nash and Hogan running the
Oh,
show
trust
in the
me, I,
back.
I was I was watching at this point when Flaming David Arquette became champion, when Vince Russo became the champion.
Oh God, yeah, that was. Look, I love WCW, but those were dark days.
Those were very, very dark days. Again, I remember I was watching the episode when David Arquette became the champion.
That's just as bad as Vince McMahon. Didn't Vince McMahon become champion once? Like in
Oh
the
yes,
yeah,
oh yes.
I look, I don't think, unless you're going to become a active wrestler, you should not be going. I'm sorry, like that's just manufactured tension that they're working on. Anyway, keep going. I'm sorry, I'm tangenting.
No, 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 it's fine. It's fine. As I said, but yeah, still called Steve Austin representing WCW. It was bullshit then. It's bullshit now. Because again, as I said, he doesn't represent WCW. Um, but yes, so that particular thing fizzled out, and he gets the blame for it. And then the NWO come back, and he fused with the NWO.
Is
And
that the NWO? That's the WWE NWO with Steiner in it and Brett and
no, no,
no,
no, no,
Brett
no.
wasn't.
Originally, it was Hulk Hogan, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, the original NWO.
Oh, okay.
But what happened was is that the Rock, the recipe after this one, it was Rock Hogan, and Hogan was getting, and apparently the plan was to bring back Hulkamania, because there's a big wave of nostalgia about Hulk Hogan. So when he hulked up and did the whole thing and then did all that sort of thing, people got over it, and then Stone Cold was in the match. WrestleMania. I can't remember what match it was, to be honest with you. Pass. I know. At this point, he was feuding with Eric Bischoff over
Kurt
things
Angle,
that
I
happened.
think, wasn't there was a point where he was feuding with Kurt Angle for a bit.
Yeah, a little bit. But Eric Bischoff is the thing I remember where he was having like redneck reshaw matches and they hat, cowboy hat matches and God knows what else. It was because basically at this point he was a cripple. He could literally like move his neck or anything. So um, the next WrestleMania was his last. He he got to wrestle The Rock more time, and he did the right thing. He put The Rock over and didn't mention at all that this was his last match. So he got rock bottomed, 1, 2, 3, job done, and he goes right off into the sunset. Now does come back for appearances. He
Which is
was I
fine.
forget, but he comes back to be like Raw GM. I think he's like Raw GM for a bit, and he was like a commissioner or something for a bit. Now, to me personally, if you're going to get Stone Cold back, he needs to be back on a permanent basis. Get him to be somebody like who's the man of authority. Get him to do that. Vince McMahon. is sick of the current roster, riding rush shot, having that they're riding rush shot, and the only person he knows they'll listen to is Stone Cold because he lived, done it, and was stood up to Vince for them. So he says, right, I'm bringing Stone Cold in to be a stable voice. He speaks for you to me. You can speak to him. But the thing is that he goes into the WWE Hall of Fame, which he should be in, to be honest with you. As I said, but how would you categorize his career?
Punch, punch, kick, kick, stunner. That's that's how I'd
No,
categorize.
he did more moves than that. He did suplexes. He did like he did Lou Fez presses. He did
Okay, a
uh
Lufez press. I mean, into some punches.
he did the knee drop, so the elbow drop. He did the elbow drop from the top. He did other
Did he ever have a
maneuvers.
submission move that he used besides like a sleeper?
I think Texas Cloverleaf maybe. He did try and wrap that up against Bret Hart, I do believe, if
I
I'm
don't
not
remember. He
mistaken.
might have. I mean, he might have busted out some moves back then to, for some submissions. But I mean, look, as I said, that's how I would summarize his career. I mean, did he definitely set the precedent for the Attitude Era? The Attitude Era is not even my favorite era of WWF. So, I mean, I was more of a WCW fan. So you can
Okay, but
probably imagine I am more of a fan of the 2000, like the mid 2000 to late 2000 wrestling, because there was more emphasis on telling a match in the ring rather than running around stone cold stuttering people on Zambozis. I mean, I'm not trying to. As I said, Stone Cold has his place in the annals of wrestling history. I understand why people like him. I understand why people like his stories and his promos and all that. I get all that. But for me personally, my favorite wrestlers of all time have been Bret Hart, Chris Benoit. I know, sorry, and like Eddie Guerrero. The technical wrestlers, the high flyers, the ones that put their AJ Styles, Christopher Daniels. God, I mean, Petey Williams. I could keep going on, and there's Shelton Benjamin. These are not guys that you think of when you think of Stone Cold Steve Austin. So that's why, I mean, you think of Shawn Michaels when you think of those wrestlers, Bret Hart when you think of those wrestlers. So that's why I'm not that. I mean, as I said, has he had a remarkable career? Absolutely, and he put his life and livelihood on the line because he was seriously injured in a match, and he still came back and he still worked. And you know what? I'll give him kudos for that. He for the love of the sport. I understand it. I watched it for years. I watched it in the late '90s. I watched it in the mid 2000s up through the early 2010s. So I mean that's kind of the bottom line because cousin Cheeto says so, at least in my regard.
no, but I mean, I agree with you because again, like when it comes to my favorite wrestlers, Stone Cold isn't necessarily on that list. He's not in my top 10 at least. If I go in my top 10, it's like, you know, Sting, Ricky's the Dragon Steamboat, the British Bulldog. I don't know what I said, but like, if I'm going like Vader, uh, you know, Chris Benoit, Chris Jericho,
Oh,
Eddie
Chris Jericho's
Guerrero,
another one. Yeah.
Eddie Guerrero, I'm trying to think of this, Kurt Angle. I'm trying to think like guys from like that area, William Regal back in the day.
Oh, love Regal. I don't think he ever got enough love in any
But as I
program.
said, like if we did this about Sting, I think have more to say than we do for Stone Cold because I think
Oh,
we both.
absolutely. Yeah, 1000%. I love Sting. I mean, he was like when I first started watching, he was doing his rafter promo, like not even promos. He was doing his rafter appearances. Like that's some of the earliest memories I have of WCW is the rafter promos, the inception of the NWO, stuff like that. So I mean, yeah, you're right. I probably would have, if we did something on Sting, I'd have a ton more to say. But
Well,
Stone.
actually, that's what we should do because as I said, Sting is my favorite wrestler of all time. So,
Well, then we know what the
uh,
next one's gonna be.
but yeah, as I said, yeah, Stone Cold, as I said, like he made a lot of money, and the thing is that you can tell that even now when he talks about the business, he still has a passion for it, and like for his podcast and stuff like that, he talks a lot of sense. Uh, I do think, and promo wise, I've always thought his promos have always been the best part of his work because they come across as like he actually means what he's saying. It doesn't come across like he's quote unquote acting. It comes across as like, no, he's legitimately serious about what he says and stuff like that. So I think that, but work wise, again, like he's good at selling, but I don't think offensively he's good at portraying that he's actually hurt the guy because he's all, as you said before, punch punch. A few offensive moves and then he'll go for a Stone Cold Stunner. Now, for me, if so, I mean, I understand it with like a mid-level guy, but with an upper tier guy, you need to do more than the push punch, kick, new first press, you know, so, and then the stunner because you got to lead up to that. But again, if people are, are blown up for it, then just do that. So, so again, that's all I've got to say about Stone Cold. But I do think that his legacy is cemented, and I do think what I think of what will always be in other people's top tens. He's not in mine personally. I thought we were saying he's obviously not in yours, but it'll be other people's forever.